Welcome to the Living Loud and Proud podcast, brought to you by Disability Pride, Pennsylvania. If you need a link to the transcript for this episode, please visit our accessible website at www.disabilitypridepa.org/podcast. And now, here is your host.
Hey folks, welcome to the Living Loud and Proud podcast. I'm your host, Phill Rosen, here with my co-host, DECA Horton.
Hello.
And we're here at the bingo party for Disability Pride.
Everybody
Halloween.
say hi.
Everyone say hi.
They played bingo.
Yeah, we all did. We all won.
And in costume. Very good juju.
Yeah.
That was Vicky saying it was very good juju as people were playing bingo.
Mm-hmm. And we're coming today with a little bit of a spooky sort of topic. It's all about changelings, the myth, the legend. Ray, you actually talked to me about this a little bit. You want to get started with just your thoughts?
Here goes what was going on. For like the last couple of months, Phill and I had been trying to figure out, the different scary subjects. And I was telling him we could do scary subjects all throughout the year and everything. But we eventually settled, like maybe a month ago, and said, hey, let's talk about changelings. And, people like, well, isn't this a disability-centric, podcast? I was like, yes. And guess what we're going to reveal to you about how that, the whole thing about changelings, actually applies to that. And then we had some difficulties like during the last week or so, and then we decided to talk about it with you people here and the audience out there in podcast land about changelings. Phill has done quite a bit of research on it. I've known quite a bit of stuff, being a horror fanatic myself, if you know me, So we decided basically put everybody else here at the Halloween party through our discussion about changelings. And what is it about changelings that makes it something that could be discussion had in a disabled-centric discussion? Phill?
Well, so for a long time in the Middle Ages, there was this long story about, children being taken either by demons or by fairies in the middle of the night or during the day. Doesn't really matter. And, these were children that tended to, act a little bit, strangely for a lot of people.
Because they were convinced they were replaced by some mystical being, whether it was another fairy or a goblin or a demon, And these are what were called the changelings. But, okay, you guys heard what we said. What do you think was the real deal with changelings? Because we're not going to believe that there was such a thing as kids being replaced with demons or, fairies or goblins or anything. What do you think these real human children actually had going on with them that would make somebody think that? Lamar. No. What were the kids being, why were these people thinking these kids were being taken by? What was it about their behavior? Okay. Did you hear her? She said they were autistic. And yes, through all the research that we've come across, a lot of these changeling legends directly, these kids were just autistic. But because they were different, they wanted to, we're talking about medieval ages. And believe it or not, even as late as the early 1900s, kids were being called changelings because they were different from the so-called normal kids.
Well, and remember, too, autism wasn't really a diagnosis until the mid-20th century anyways, so that would make sense that the early 1900s would have that.
What? Filler?
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how
train
many of you have seen movies where, there was a child who's replaced, with some other mystical being, like I said, goblin or anything like that? Well, a movie. Yeah, where the kid was kidnapped and replaced with, because there was the famous one that was called the Changeling. Back, what was that, late 70s or early 80s?
Yeah.
You know, but there's been tons of other ones. Nobody's... Okay, once again, our buddy Lamar is determined to say that Jeffrey Dahmer might have been a changeling. I'm going to go with that. He might have been an actual real-life changeling and not somebody with autism. You know, it's been purported that they purported. Did I say purported? Could that ever be a real word? Anyway, but purported that he actually was. But you know how it is with the gossip rags and everything. He could have been, and they downplayed it. Or he probably was, like I said, and they upplayed it. Probably wasn't, and they upplayed it, you know.
I didn't know other movies, other supporters when I recently came out, that didn't have the actual documentary. You know, you see they show how he was physically bullied and his mother was there, she was physically abusing him. So over time, he eventually would take that anger and took it out on others. I'm not saying he did it was right, but it's still wrong. But whereas like younger, you see like everything like that, why they got coming and figuring out what's going on in that household because his father was there. That's what she put his anger out on him. So even though he killed himself on his
Right. Well, Phil, like I said, you've read up on a few different situations. Is there one that you could think of right now that you share with everybody here?
Well, you know, for whatever reason, my mind is blank.
We could edit in later and pretend like we were still talking to everybody, but still try.
Let me see.
The scenario that a kid is taken
Yes.
and brought back.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, the way it works out, and this has been going on since, what's the earliest myth of a changeling?
The earliest I saw was like the 1500s, but I'm sure it was earlier than that.
Yeah, because, you know, in a way you could almost say that the little wolf kids that Rome and everything was named after could have been a variant of changelings. But basically what happened with someone being called a changeling, the mythological aspect is that you have your child. And it's usually someone that's from newborn. So I think the oldest changeling myth was maybe like 10 or 11 years old. Your child disappears one night. Then your child reappears. And your child is different. And your child is not really your child, but a duplicate that was originally a goblin or a demon or a fairy. And yeah, that's what a changeling is. And like I said, I'm shocked that none of you have. I mean, I've seen a lot of horror movies that was the plot, you know, where the kid got taken. Technically, Damien from the Omen movies, there you go. It was a variant of a changeling. He was the ultimate changeling because he was the demon that was what? The son of? Yes. The devil. You know, I mean, some stories of the Omen, the child was replaced. Some, he was just straight up Christian, like Christ was born, you know, that it wasn't even that he was stolen away, that he was actually, you know, the devil's child from Jump Street. Yeah, you know. But, like, if you read, like, a lot of the original texts and books, yeah, the child was born and then replaced with the son of Satan. You know what? Okay, The Exorcist was all about possession. But here goes the funny thing. Even though we're talking about that, but also a lot of demon possessions, people blamed various mental, we don't, that's a whole other podcast that we can do. But yeah, especially with children with autism, they were said to be possessed. And so of course, what do? You go in and get some exorcist that's going to come through and, probably physically damage your child by drilling holes in his head to get the demon out. When all it was is that he was just, they were autistic, But yeah, that was a good, yes, it ties into that, that they often went hand in hand. Changelings, demon possession, and yeah, once again, disability, being different, and they just either want to stigmatize it or try and come up with some kind of excuse for it. That wasn't always a good one. Why couldn't they have gone and been the son of God being, I mean, why it always got to be the go-to of a demon, or something nefarious? Yeah, yeah. But like I said, why does it always have to be a bad thing? Because like what's one of the most, it's not always the case, but one of the things that made it cool to be autistic is the whole, Rain Man thing. And a lot of these kids show high aptitude in different things. We're not talking about this, happened. It's always been that way. So why couldn't that have been a blessing instead of a curse? But no, if you're able to go on ahead and, pull off amazing things because you're wired for it, it has to be the devil, not God.
Really in the UK, and he came to the US, and a lot of his situation was always being ignored. And he grew up like that with the Christian Catholic Church or whatever, and a lot of the people were ignoring him about his situation. I relate. I just happened to look it up because
Uh-huh.
the kind of situation that I was dealing with. I didn't read the whole thing, but I was reading stories and the situation he was in, the situation I was in, and being able to look at resources and relate to some of the other situations I deal with OER and things like that. And so, but yeah, it's a book called I'm going to read this one that talks about how older guys are usually going to look at Catholic Church and how the nuns and things like that, stories of weird stuff like that, that, he called it out, like, he was a nun, but certainly he didn't have a disability, he wasn't a Jew or things, but other people are talking about the Jesus, they were
Yes.
Yeah, and the other thing that we should talk about with changelings too is it tended to be more developed societies, like more tribal societies tended to not have this sort of like separation when it came to disabilities, and there were definitely a little more supports. They were there's a lot more humanity that was put forth and honored, but in Western societies, there was kind of a very rigid way that you were supposed to act and speak and everything. And so, of course, people with autism maybe have a slightly different way of interfacing with the world. That could be a problem. And that's part of where the changeling myth really came from.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And, yeah, you know what? Okay, I was trying to get everybody to tell me about a particular movie they might have seen that had, the plot of a changeling in it. But oddly enough, even the hardcore horror watchers can't think of one right now. But I watched one called They Whispered that came out in 2024. And it was about a husband and wife with their child. It stars Malcolm Gooding. Some of you, if you were fans of like iZombie, he was the main character's police partner and everything. And he's also on Reacher as the cop that helps Jack Reacher out a lot. Anyway, well, he plays the father, and like I said, he has the wife. Oh, I love Reacher. Who doesn't love Reacher? He's trying to become Batman, too. He's really talking hard. Yeah, he's talking hard with James Gunn about being Batman. All right, but we got to get back on Changelings. We'll have a Reacher show someday. We'll figure out how we can make that disability
You
centric.
know the newest thing that is Changeling is in the Wednesday.
That's right. Changelings are also in the Wednesday TV show. Also.
Wednesday accused the headmaster of being a changeling.
Yeah, and technically, her main villain, the boyfriend, kind of is a changeling also.
Yeah.
But he really was a changeling, you know. But yeah, this movie, They Whispered, it was so great. Very atmospheric. And like I said, now, once again, just like I said, you know, how, you know, a disability, you know, like this story could have been true, like at any era, because what had happened was their son, Malcolm Goodman's son, he was playing with his friends and they fell down a shaft or something, I think it was, that was like in a tree. Oh, that's another thing too. They always seem to have changelings being found in trees, you know, like in the trunks or whatever. But this was some kind of shaft that he fell down and he wound up in a coma. And when the boy finally came out of the coma, all this here weird, wicked stuff started happening, and then they started realizing, oh my goodness, he's not really my child. And I can't remember if it was this same movie, but it was going on with other children too who had been replaced. But that might have been another movie that I saw that recently came out. Because, like I said, I'm shocked that the rest of you have not been seeing all these here crazy child swapping movies that they've been having like the last few years. But like one of our guests said, zombies have been the in thing to watch lately. Anyway, and so, you know, having watched this movie, I'm not going to lie. I sat there and I thought, so the kid comes out of a coma different. But, you know, what made it the horror movie and what made it really this way is, yeah, it really was that kind of case. But I could see how so many people thought this. Because synchronicity is a strong thing. That's another podcast that we'll have for another time. So weird things happen around a child who just came out of coma. How many people come out of comas and they're not the same? There's all kinds of things that can happen. Either traumatic brain injury or, yeah, something changed. You know, like how many of you have, like, you know, seen those documentaries about people who come out of coma and wind up knowing a totally different language that they never studied, you know, or being aware of different things. So, yeah, I definitely could see how, like, you know, unsophisticated minds back then could look at, you know, someone, especially a child, who has just come out of a coma and is totally different from the way they were prior. And they're not going to want to think about, you know, they had some kind of traumatic brain injury, or as like they used to say, brain damage, you know, because they just don't want to think that because it's reflective of them. You know, I could have prevented this if I had been a better parent. You know, some of them that is true. Some of them you can't. I'm sorry, you can't stop fate. You know, but once again, because of how they were after they came out of the coma, oh my goodness, they must have been replaced by a goblin, a fairy, a demon, or, like my girl over here pointed out, possessed. You know, so let's call the Exorcist here too, you know. But yeah, that movie, I recommend. It was a really good watch. You know, it's called They Whispered. Came out in 2024.
The reading with Monique, she started off regular and then she changed. And they said something was wrong with her. Did y'all see that movie?
No, I didn't see that. The reading?
It's on Netflix. It's 2 years old now.
I missed that one. I mean, I knew there was a couple of thriller type films that she was in.
Yeah, she, you know, every day regular, but then at night she changed and she messed around and killed her kids. And I believe their dad, because the dad came over to the house to check on them. And then she had someone come over and try to do one of those readings on her to see, why was she supposedly dealing with all of this hurt and pain, this fate, and the whole time it was her. So while the young girl was, doing her little thing with that palm and all of that stuff with her, she changed into a different person right in front of them and then started to try to kill them.
And once again, in real life, with cases that actually went like this, because I watch a lot of true crime also when I get tired of watching all those terrible, hey, do you have a camera? Let's make a movie. Films that TV and other free streamers show, they should be a law against it. But anyway, I watch a lot of true crime. And yeah, that same situation that she's talking about, which was the plot of the reading, has happened so many times. And either A, the podcasters or whoever, talk about they might have been possessed or they might have been switched out, because it seems like it was the more, fantastic way to go with, telling their true crime story. But in the end, we just had somebody that was ill-equipped to handle the pressures that, parenting and other things or social interaction, well, I don't even have to finish that sentence. You know what I mean. But, yeah. Phil?
Yeah, well, we were kind of talking about demon possession and all that, and when we were talking about the changelings, I was thinking about Hereditary, the movie with the demon Pazuzu or whatever.
Yeah. By the way, big hit, Hereditary. It's already reaching cult status. It's only like 2 or 3 years old.
I think it's a little bit older than that.
Oh, 4 or 5?
I think it came out in 2018, I think. Something like that.
Okay.
So 7 years
So
now.
you did see Hereditary?
Yeah, I've seen her.
Okay. So sad the way that girl's head got done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, the I kind of see that movie as a bit of an allegory for mental health, mental illness, kind of being something that's inescapable in families. Like it might jump generations or whatever, but eventually people will start exhibiting some of the same symptoms over and over again. So, which is another disability related
No, keep
topic.
talking.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Do any other movies come to mind to anyone that's like similar?
Well, what's kind of funny? I was just thinking about when Dina brought up the reading, which, yeah, like I said, that kind of goes into, because technically it's a situation that would happen, same thing with the Changeling. But since we've been talking, has anybody else thought about, oh, wow, wait a second, now that I think about it, I have seen a movie where I've seen the child or somebody else get swapped out. Like, how many of those different ones where the parents get swapped out, and the kids, have to try and save the day? There's been quite a few of those made since, oh my God, the 60s? I think was the first one I've seen with that kind of plot.
Reminds me of one of the Evil Dead films.
Oh.
That lady, they're like, Mom. He's like,
You guys aren't going to believe this, but guess what? The Evil Dead films, okay, one of the things that Sam Raimi talked about that influenced him was observing those kind of behaviors from people that were alleged to be possessed or changelings or something like that. And, so we'll say that they were the real life inspiration was at 1, but Sam Raimi said, let me amp this up to 1,000, and there's no exaggeration using those numbers, okay, to create my deadites, as his, things are called, demons and all that. But yeah, once again, yeah, so you know what? Actually, come to think of it, this here stigma that was put on, people, who had these disabilities really has revolutionized pop culture, modern pop culture when we stop to think about it.
Yeah.
Because the Evil Dead franchise is oh, whoa, and everything.
did you ever see about the Annabelle doll? And it's a true story. I used to watch Court TV a lot, which is now True TV.
Oh, yeah. I know all about the whole Annabelle thing. We'll talk about that some other day because that could actually be an interesting podcast talking about psychological influences, because a lot of stuff that revolves around the real life Annabelle thing really did happen,
There's
Yeah.
certain places here, and not just in the U.S., but certain places in the world where there's places that are, I don't want to say hidden, but they know that, how can I put it? It was one place, I forget what it was called, in Connecticut, and where you go in that temple, people were missing, and they found bodies.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
There's a place in Connecticut, but like, 'cause dark spirit is real and the Holy Spirit is real. And that's why God knows.
Oh, I'm not going to admit or not admit.
Because I remember.
Like I said, for those of you who actually know me well enough, with the weird things I've said or seen or done, but but yeah, I will not dispute that with you, but I'm not going to say I'm necessarily co-signing with you. Just know you'll never have me judge you on that one. That's where we're going to leave it at.
I remember when I was younger, like true story, mine, Gina, and she was leaving by when I didn't know nothing about like I know now. And when I was in church, when I was in middle school, when I was laying in bed, like 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what 3 o'clock in the morning means?
Yeah, that's the witching hour.
Yeah, that's like I didn't even know that stuff like until when I got in high school. So anyway,
I wake up
down,
at that time all the time.
anyway, laying down my
Vicky loves it.
closet right here, and all of a sudden like I
You're like,
felt
oh,
like
I'm
there was
glad that
something
you're
on
up
my
so
face.
early, waking me up.
So when we say God, there are many gods, and there's dead God, which is Jesus Christ. Nothing works when you say God. But when I say Jesus Christ, it's all like you see this flash of white light. And so years later, just like 2020 probably, and I used to watch JWTV on we talk about all the stuff that's going on. And so some guy said the same exact thing. Only 2 days later, I'm at the Chuck Trump State Center. Man, this man white guy, you talking. He said the same exact thing. He was younger, he was older than me, I was like in the 70s. And when he was laying down, it felt like something was grabbing him. And he said, Jesus Christ, he said that, and it felt like you feel this, yeah. And you feel, but only around that time, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you'll see this flash, like when you're laying down, it feel like you got laying in bed. And so that's when I started looking into Alice Crowley, Albert Pike, and all ones like that, big names. And
Yeah, me and Crowley used to hang out back in the day.
you found out
Real
that-
smelly guy. I say it jokingly, and I really did say it jokingly. Me and Al did not hang. I was joking. Well, I'm talking like I'm a little bit too familiar with him, though. All right, scratch that.
You know John Todd? Did you ever see John Todd?
No.
John Todd was, and he also did witchcraft, and he exposed a lot of them in the industry, and I think it was like in the 70s, and but he also did witchcraft, but he changed the stuff, because his family was originally Catholic, but he converted back years later when he found out that things really what was going on in the entertainment industry and the government, things of that nature. So if you look at John Todd, he said a little bit of everything.
Right. Well, we're kind of sticking right now to the. That's all very fascinating because believe it or not, there's something regarding that witching hour. The 3 o'clock hour, the 2:30, 3 o'clock hour, that can possibly be explained scientifically. It's actually a deficiency, I believe, of zinc that causes people to wake up at that particular time. But that's a whole other fascinating, and it's still being investigated. I actually came across because I have that problem also. And I was really starting to worry. But we will definitely come back to that. But has anybody else thought about something since then? No? Well. Okay, everybody.
go.
We're going to close out the podcast.
Yeah.
Does everybody want to say a big old group? Bye-bye. Happy Halloween and all that other stuff.
All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for listening in. This is Phill, Rosen signing off, and Ray.
Oh, yeah. All right. Bye. Holla. Like you know me. Whatever. All right. Love you. Bye-bye.
All right. Till the next time.
please visit our accessible website at www.disabilitypridepa.org. You can find us on social media at DisabilityPridePA on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.